Hello, everybody. Good evening. Good to see you. Nick?
Howdy.
Hi. You got a mic in your hand.
I do.
It's kind of weird. Okay, so we'll get into this. My name's Christian Gray. I've known that guy for a little while. Been helping advise District216. Amazing project. Lots of opportunity. Lots of good value for the community and really making a difference in people's lives. So thanks for that. I've known this guy for a decade plus, if I do the math right.
Yeah, that's right.
It's been a minute. So tonight it's going to be a very casual, comfortable conversation. And Nick's going to be sharing a little bit of the adventure he's been on the last few years. Before we get started, I just wanted to get a feel for who's in the room because we want it to be a conversation. And we're definitely going to have some Q&A. We'll save that towards the end, but feel free to jot down your questions or put them in your phone. How many people in the room have done drugs before? Let's see those hands. Everybody's hand? Wow. Honest crew. All right, different frame. How many people have done plant medicine or potentially psychedelics? Maybe about half. Okay. Perfect. And how many people have talked to an animal before? Let's see. So if you didn't put your hands up, I would challenge you. I would think that we all have spoken to an animal before. We just don't always listen. So part of the conversation tonight is Nick's experiences in that realm. We did a lot of prep earlier today, so I have my notes, and we're going to make sure and get into this. I've spent 25 plus years with plant medicine and psychedelics. There's all kinds of interesting dimensions to those conversations and experiences. And I think that helps open up the possibility for even understanding or appreciating what Nick's going to share. You can imagine some folks would hear the title of this and not give it a lot of credibility, but we're here to dig into it tonight. So, Nick, I think a good place to begin is how did this start for you? And a little bit of what is this and how did it start?
Yeah, thanks. As it states up there, I ate a cactus, and now I psychically talk to animals. So I hear them when they're talking telepathically. Sometimes they send visuals. Sometimes it's a feeling, for example. But I would say the most recent iteration, and then we'll talk about it, but there's steps that got me here. But the most recent iteration was about a year ago. My wife and I went to a psychic fair in Carlsbad, where we live. And I pointed out a psychic to Julietta, and I said, what do you think about her? And she said, that sounds great. You go first.
Good job, Juliet.
And so, right. So it was all but 15 minutes. And the first thing she starts to do is she draws this heart, and she says, this is either a formal romantic relationship or it's an animal, and she's a psychic medium. And she said, yeah, so it's an animal. And the messaging is, you did too much. And immediately, I recognized it as my cat, Henry, who lived to be 22. The last 2 years of his life, we were going back and forth to the vet multiple times. Hydration, change the food, the blood work, whatever it was. So you did too much was a perfect summary. She then continued as it hasn't quite landed that I'm talking to my dead cat. And she says, they're now showing me Dr. Doolittle. They're telling me that you can talk to animals and it's going to be easy for you. Now, a lot of people would probably think, what is this shit? My reaction was, I've never heard anything more truthful in my life, and I don't really understand why that is. So I leave, I go home, I do meditation, I tune into my cat, Chucky, and immediately what I see is this brilliant white light. The type that you read about that's associated with angels and spirit guides and this type of thing. And I think, absolutely not. I mean, my cat shits in a box, right? And sometimes he shits on the floor, but this is not my cat. So I call her up. I say, this isn't working. This is not easy like you said it would be. And she says, come on. It's not going to be what you want it to be. You can't expect it to show up in certain ways. You just has to be the channel, let the information come through, and see what you get. Okay. So I decided to give it a second shot. I buy animal communication books. You'd be surprised how many there are.
So a lot of research and discovery happening
Tons.
Next.
Yeah. And I get animal communication sessions set up. I have no idea what it should even look like. If I'm going to do this, I should probably figure out what it is.
So you were participating with an animal communicator?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And right before I'm on my way to go to one of those animal communication sessions, I stand up from the living room table on the way to the computer to get into Zoom, and I see this flash of Return of the Jedi. It's a picture of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda, and I know immediately what I'm being shown. I'm being shown a student-teacher relationship, and I'm not the teacher in this scenario. Chucky, my cat, is the teacher. And then I got on the line with the animal communicator, and she goes, "Do you know who he is?" "Yeah, he just showed it to me." and I tell her about this, right? And so that was, I don't know, springtime, I guess. This past spring.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Got you.
And so since then, talking to horses and snakes and cats and dogs and dolphin.
No, whoa. So let's pause on all the animals.
Okay.
Because there's lots to unpack.
Yeah.
Let's back up a little bit because I think it's important, at least being a native Californian, born and bred, and Esalen on the Central Coast, and all the things that are hippy-dippy and granola about California.
Yeah.
You are not from California.
No.
So you're from New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
It's on that other coast. And
it's true.
There's a little different attitude towards life, and like tell us
It's a little different.
Who's Nick Musica that this showed up for you in the last year or two? Because I think the start's kind of an interesting frame.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wasn't talking to animals then. I mean, I was talking to animals just like anyone else would talk to animals, I assume, right? Like sit, stay, do the things. But certainly didn't even know this even existed until probably 2 years ago. I just had no idea it was a thing. But yeah, grew up in New Jersey.
Most people don't.
Most people don't, right? I know. Well, and I now I get that,
Yeah.
but I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't for a long time. But yeah, grew up in Jersey. Only 12 years of Catholic school. That's my standard Catholic school joke. So a different belief system than talking with animals, right?
How would this go over with your nuns?
I have no idea.
Oh yeah, I bet you do.
Probably not great.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, probably not great.
They talk a lot about communicating with animals in the Bible.
Is that right?
Yeah, St. Francis.
Well, St. Francis of
Very true.
Assisi. Yeah,
That's yeah.
there's that story.
Who we have outside. Yeah, he's outside on a porch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So spiritualism.
Not so much. Yeah, not so much. I mean, the only thing that comes to mind is, when I was 17 or 18, I was going to a psychic. It was always interesting the whole psychic phenomenon was interesting to me, and I found a lot of value in it. And I remember one day after the session, I asked Jim, his name is Jim, so why do I always feel so stoned when I leave here? And he said, well, you drop deep into the meditation. Okay. I didn't know what that meant.
Right.
I mean, now I do.
At that age. How old were you then?
17, 18.
So that's pretty early to get into that.
Super early, yeah.
Yeah.
And then psychedelics were roughly around that time. I mean, in the bio I said 20s, but yeah, it was senior in high school.
Right. So these are psychedelics with set and setting called A Good Time or music festival.
Oh man, no. You know what? The worst way to start your relationship with psychedelics is to go to a Dead show at in Giant Stadium, buy a bag of mushrooms.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And then keep on walking through the parking lot, and at some point have your buddy look at you and go, "You ate all those?" And you go, "Yeah." And he says, "You shouldn't have done that." And then you realize why you shouldn't have done that. Yeah, that was my first experience with it. Yeah.
That's an interesting origin story to this tale. So fast forward a number of years, and then you're in Southern California, you're in San Diego, and what's chapter 2 or act 2 of psychedelics?
Yeah, so randomly, I would argue randomly, there may be a different story to this, but randomly, I get a phone call from a friend of mine. We'll call him Christian.
No, let's not use a different name. Okay.
So Christian. He calls me up and says, "You're coming on Saturday, right?" I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." It was about a San Pedro ceremony. And eventually I said, "Yeah, great, let's go." And I have no idea what it's about. So I start Googling San Pedro.
You shouldn't have done that.
And I start seeing, keep in mind, Grateful Dead, too much mushrooms, and now I'm seeing cactus ceremony, talk to God. And
Energetic purging.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's not puking, it's purging.
Yes.
I'm like, what is this shit? Like, I have no idea what this is. And still I'm going to go and spend the entire day and do this thing. And it was amazing. I feel like for about 30 years, something happened, and that reconnected me to whoever I was at age 20. Like something just got in the way now. Now we're back to where we should be.
Got you. And it sounds like you're going someplace else. So post Wachuma ceremony and some bit of awakening or awareness,
Yeah.
then the animal thing.
So at the same time, for whatever reason, I said, I want to figure out what's been going on with these dreams that I've been having for 25 years. And so I was living snippets of dreams, snippets of the real world in my, or having dreams of the real world and then living them out.
So is this more like lucid dreaming or like deja vu vibes?
Yeah, so none of those.
Neither of those. Okay.
Neither of those. And I asked people that, and every time they came back and asked the question, said, no, I looked it up, that's not what it is. And I only recently, in the past 4 or 6 months, there's a term for it. It's called clairvoyant dreams. So if you would imagine dreaming about a random dog on a random corner in a random city, and then tomorrow you drive by said random dog cities, right? That type of thing, and you're like, that's very strange. I just
You're making me think of the movie Inception right now. Lots of
yes,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And that would happen repeatedly. And the first time that happened was age 20, shortly after experimenting with psychedelics, right?
Right.
And it freaked me out for a while, but it kept on showing up, and it was never anything meaningful. So I'm like, what's the point of this? I don't understand what the point of it is. But I wanted to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I went to a psychic who's now a colleague and dear friend, and everyone leading up to him.
This is David.
David Waldis, yeah.
Yeah.
And so everyone leading up to talking with David about this, it was a hard no. It's not lucid dreams. It's not anything of those things. And David's response was, it sounds like something's tapping you on the shoulder. And I'm like, what a shitty response that is, right? Like, it's not an answer, but it's also not a no. And I remember going home and talking with Julietta, and she's like, well, how was it? I'm like, well, everything was a hard no, and there's something here I need to figure out. Well, that was 2017, and some things have been figured out. There's still more to come, I imagine. But that was the start of a whole another crazy thing.
So we've got I'm just trying to like demarcate because everything's like pre or post, the Depression, or pre or post World War II, or pre or post COVID. Yeah. So you have the Wachuma ceremony and that thing, and then you have the medium at the fair. Yeah. And then it was about a year or so ago. How long ago?
Yeah. Adelita was a year ago.
So call it a year ago. So for the last year, I'm just trying to try it on. Like, if for the last year and prior to that, in my whole existence, I'd never had this ability, skill, or gift, and now I have it, what are some of the things that happened in the last year? Now, you can talk about some of those other animals or surprise stories that showed up.
So even leading up to it, like, I started to hear things and see things. Like, things started to change. And it was super slow to come on, and then it was sort of normal. But you don't really talk about it with anyone because no one else is really having these experiences, right? So you're sort of
like
just,
family holidays, like, hey guys, guess what I've learned?
You don't, it just doesn't come up in conversation. So when the animals started to show up for me, I kept, I was reading these animal communication books, and they kept saying it's just like people, like working with people. And after working with David, learning how to track energy and all that fun stuff, it made sense that it was just like working with people, but I didn't have any experience with the animal aspect of it. So I'm like, it makes sense in theory, but like things sort of fall apart after, from theory to practicality.
Sure.
So I just didn't understand what that really looked like when it showed up. And then the first time I heard something was from Chucky, the cat that I referenced earlier. And it was when friends of ours came to visit from the East Coast. Richie and his wife, Rita.
So these are people you've known your whole life.
I've known Richie since second grade, I think.
Right.
And Rita brought some incense over. And she sits down on the couch. She's next to Chucky. And I'm standing up. And she says, oh, I brought this incense. I heard you like incense. And here you go. It's a little tin. And what I said in response was, great, I'll light it on the coffee table, and that'll keep him off the coffee table. Chucky. And about 30 seconds later, he starts hissing. He's a little lovely cat. He doesn't hiss at anyone. And I'm like, what the shit is happening here? And Rita doesn't know. Well, pet him a little bit. Don't pet him. I don't know. Don't get bit. I don't know what's happening here. And I told Richie and Rita, I'm talking animals now, and things are happening. And so I think it was Rita who said, why don't you ask him what happened? So that night as I'm going to sleep, as soon as I hit the pillow and I'm out, I got woken up by him saying, "Who does she think she is to tell me what to do?" And I'm wide awake, and I was like, "Oh man, you got confused about what I said." So now I'm talking to him in my head, and like, buddy, like it wasn't her. She could give a shit if you're on the table. You and I have talked about this so many times. Can you just stay off the table? Like it wasn't her. And then the next day, he's perfectly fine with both of them. So yeah, that was the first time I heard an animal. It happens pretty frequently now, but yeah, first time.
Interesting. So after the initial, I'm still trying to like process. So you have that experience and this whole new thing, which, you know, based on prior experience with psychedelics, like you're more open to it. I imagine your 20-year-old self would be like a little skeptical or like, what's wrong with this guy?
You know what? I'm still skeptical, and I was such, at least from my perspective, I was such a bad candidate for all of this. I poo-pooed all of it. You know, like going into crystal stores, I'm like, nice rocks. Like I just didn't have a relationship with those things. The way people would talk about them, like it just didn't resonate with me. But all of those things, you know, all the things they say, and I haven't heard all the things, obviously, they say in those crystal stores, yeah, it's real.
So what are some of the other kind of interesting conversations or things that have come up between you and animals you're expecting to engage with, or did you kind of go down a certain path?
Yeah, you know, for a while it was just me and animals. It was me and the cat. It was me and a random dog in Home Depot, just showing appreciation for the dog. Like I smiled at the dog, and then I felt this wave of energy, and I'm like, so that's how it works now. Got it. Okay, so that's some aspect of communication. I started to volunteer at a horse sanctuary because those animal communication readings, everyone kept asking me, so what do you do with horses? I don't do anything with horses. What have you done with horses? I don't do anything with horses. I have no relationship with horses. Well, maybe you should work with horses. Okay. And then I would get experiences with the horses. And then the week before New Year's, I thought, well, let's give it a shot. Like I don't know if I can do this for anyone else. I have no idea how it's going to work. Maybe it's going to be terribly embarrassing and fall flat on its face. Maybe it'll be the beginning of something. I have no idea. So I went on to Nextdoor and said, "Hi, my name is, I'm an animal communicator, free 15-minute sessions, sign up here." Call to action was using a Google Doc, a spreadsheet. And so I have the spreadsheet open on my computer, and I'm just sort of waiting, and I'm nervous, and I don't know what's going to happen. And the first entry comes through, and I felt the woman come through. I felt the animal come through, and I thought, this is going to work.
Wow. And
so I've been doing that. I've carved off office hours, Friday afternoons, and I talk with animals beforehand. And then I have the session with the human and tell the human what the animal said.
Wow. So I think I had a chance to come out and visit you at the horse sanctuary.
Yeah.
I met the cow dog that has
Hamilton.
big brown eyes, Hamilton. Hamilton's great. But I think there's a horse named Bravo that...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Bravo. Yeah.
Well, you want to share that story?
Yeah. So...
Because I feel like Bravo taught you a few things.
He did, yeah. So all the books were helpful. The animal communication sessions were helpful, for sure.
Speaking of books, Kindred, what was the Kindred?
Kinship with All Life was amazing. Written in 1954. So yes, the short story is a writer from Hollywood gets a dog dropped on his doorstep, and eventually he realizes the dog is reading his mind. There's one day he's sitting at the typewriter and he's thinking, do I type or do I go for a hike? Do I type or go for a hike? He lives in LA. It's a beautiful, beautiful day. And he goes, okay, I'm going to go for a hike. And this dog comes ripping through with one shoe, two shoe, his leash, the jacket he wears hiking. And he's like, what is going on here? Like, I didn't even say it out loud, and this is what's happening. So that changes the relationship with him and the dog for the next 150
Phenomenal
pages.
booklet. It's pretty short.
Yeah.
Highly recommended read, especially if you know skeptics, because I think the way it's written in the 1950s, it's very grounded.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So going back to the books, and it's just like with humans, but it's with animals, right? I didn't understand that, and I started the first day I was at the animal sanctuary. We're doing a turnout. There's 4 horses in individual stables, and there's 4 horses in a larger yard. These 4 are coming over here. These 4 are going over there, and 4 came out of the stables. And I'd never been around horses, not like this. And
A lot of horses in New Jersey where you are.
surprisingly, no, yeah. And so the horses come out, and I hear someone yelling, "Put your hand in a fist and give it to them to say hello." This is the physical hello. It's like a handshake, and they'll smell it, and now they know who you are, and now you develop a relationship from there. And so I did it to the alpha horse who came through, big white horse, and I did that, and then I'm sort of standing there, just not knowing what to do with my body, myself. I don't want to get hurt. I don't know what's going on. And then Bravo comes through, and my hand is sort of down at my waist, and he comes through, and he puts his nose, made contact. He puts his nose on my hand, and I thought, you're my guy. Like, I'm going to learn things from you.
Right.
So that was day one, week one. The next week I go back, and I'm like, well, I want to see if this is really my horse. Am I going to learn something from him? So I go into the stall where he is, and I put my hand on his neck, and there was this energetic connection that happened. And that's when I realized that's what the book is about. That's what the book is talking about. It's just like with a human, because I felt this with humans before,
Right.
but never with an animal. And this was the first time I really felt it with an animal.
So like an energetic feedback.
An energetic connection. Yeah. And that was the lesson for the day. And then the next week I go back. He's in the stall again, and I get in there, chilling out. And I'm thinking, I feel like we're already connected. Like there feels like the energy's already moving. And then all of a sudden it dropped. And I thought, he's going to walk away. That was the lesson. The lesson was the closing of the channel of the communication. And about 2 seconds later, he starts to move away into the far end of the pen. Got it. Okay, so this is the physical connection. It's like a handshake. And then there's the energetic connection, and then you drop the connection. And
That's over.
And that, at the bare minimum, are the fundamentals of the communication.
Interesting. So I think I remember a story you shared, and this isn't like in prep mode. This is going back months and months ago, because you live near a canyon and an open golf course where some wild animals go by.
Man, yeah, that was tripping.
Yeah. What happened there?
Yeah. This was in this was over the summer in Carlsbad. We live off of a main road.
Carlsbad, Southern California.
Carlsbad in San Diego.
North San Diego County. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the summertime. We have a sliding glass door window, and it's open. And I hear these sounds that are going on, but I don't wake up until I feel the bed move a little bit. And my wife, Julietta, wakes up, and she's now standing. I see her standing in front of the sliding glass door windows, and I realize she's there paying attention to the sounds that are coming out. And the sounds are coyotes that are across the street, across another group of development, into the golf course. And there's probably, I don't know, by my count, about 6 coyotes. So I'm looking at Julietta, but what I'm seeing are these 6 energetic little bodies, these little bubbles that are vibrating, blue and white colors. And every time the coyote would go high, I would see these bubbles coming off of these little energetic bodies. It was amazing. It was amazing. And so I wake up at like 5 o'clock in the morning, draw this terrible sketch. I show it to Julietta. I showed it to you at some point.
Yeah, I remember.
And I'm like, this is what happened. This is what I saw.
It's a terrible graphic, great story.
Terrible graphic. Yeah. And then the next night, same thing happens. I hear these sounds, but I don't wake up. Julietta gets up out of bed. I see her again looking outside, except now there's not 6. There's 1 coyote. I say 1 because that's what I heard. It was just 1 solid sound. And it's no longer across the street, across the golf course. It's not that. It's on the sidewalk. Like if we had a tennis ball, we could just drop it outside and probably hit it with the tennis ball. And the sound was, I've never heard a sound from a coyote like that before. It was just magical. It was beautiful. I just never heard the quality like that before. It was amazing. And what I heard was, we're largely here for you. I'm like, largely here for me? Well, that means like someone else is at play here too. I'm pointing at my wife. And that was it. And that makes sense because I'm not the one who woke up. Like right. Julietta's the one who woke up and gave the appreciation. There's a lot of appreciation in this. Like you see a beautiful animal and give appreciation. People who abuse animals will never have any amount of this relationship that we're talking about. People who love animals, who appreciate them, see them more than just I was kidding earlier, mostly, of like the little cat who just shits in the box. Like if that's the beginning and end of relationship with an animal, you're never going to see more about them. But if you can appreciate them, there's so much more there. And a lot of people just don't know what they have.
Right.
But there's so much more to this little fur ball than just this little fur ball.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I'm curious in terms of like that title and how people respond. I remember introducing you to an attorney at a conference in Las Vegas. It kind of comes to mind, but like when you explain to people what you're up to and they're not seeking out animal communication, or if you just tell them that you have this ability, how does that land sometimes?
It's typically one of two reactions. One is, what the shit is this guy talking about? Like, is this even real? Is he making it up? Is he pulling my leg? What's going on? And the other is, tell me more. And so that's with strangers, right? And so I've recently told two people in my network who I've known for, one I've known since I was 6, and another one that I've known since, I don't know, probably 10 years. One gentleman, he's a keynote speaker. He talks about getting rid of your phone and going outside and being in the woods. And so I linked in him the other day and said, hey, Jeff, I'm curious to hear how you've gotten in front of keynotes and did the thing you're doing, because I'm curious. I want to explore that for myself with this topic. And he said, I'd love to share with you. And I shot him a link to my website and said, just so you know what you're getting into, here's the story. I ate a cactus, and now I talk to animals, and this is it. And he goes, no, I get it. You're like, I did acid, I ate mushrooms, and
So that's an audience that has a certain predisposition towards
an appreciation of nature. I mean, every video he shoots about
it's about
getting
being
away from your
outside.
phone,
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
outside.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he has this relationship.
Sure.
And the gentleman who I was mentioning, who I've known since 6, is very entertaining. So we're on the line last week, and I told him I'm going to Santa Barbara. What are you going to Santa Barbara for? And I tell him about the event. And he goes, well, we should have talked a month ago. I'm having this problem with my cats. We have to lock one in the bedroom and the other one out here because they're literally trying to kill each other.
Wow.
And, I'm not quite sure if I wanted to do it, but I talked to a psychic. And, I don't know if I believe in it or not.
Right.
But
still open-minded.
But would you talk to the cats?
Right.
And there's like this hint of desperation around, like, can you solve the problem? Right. And it's like, well, like you have to pick a lane. Like,
Sure.
do you have intention for me to talk to the animal? Because if you do, then I can.
Right.
But I do talk to some folks. I get them on the line, and I have trouble.
It's not about them.
It's not about the animal, right? I have trouble connecting with the animal. I'll get a couple pieces of information, but not a lot like I would normally. And then I'll get on the line and I'll start to vet live. Hey, what's going on, Christian? What brought you in today? And at some point, very quickly in the conversation, it turns into, yeah, my animal, but I've always been interested in the psychic thing. And then, okay, so this is about you now.
Now it's not about
Got
the
it.
animal.
Okay, and that changes everything.
Sure.
Yeah.
Got it. So when you tell people, it sounds like it's probably a little polarizing. They're either like a 0 or 1. They're either open to it or want to know more, or I've seen some other reactions. I can think of some. And then I think about like who else you've shared it with, because obviously your wife is here.
Yeah.
Do you remember when you shared it with her, or was it the Chucky incident that like...
Well, the first time I shared it with Julietta was when Adelita told me at the psychic fair.
Oh, okay, so that's the first.
That was the first time.
Right.
Yeah.
And then since then, other family members, like your folks?
Yeah, I told mom, dad, sister, and sister's sort of like right in the middle of like, I'm not sure. I'm like, why would I lie about this or anything? Like, what do I have to gain? I don't know. Like, you don't believe it, get it. But like, why would I make this shit up? I don't know. And dad he was a child psychologist in New Jersey for 30 years. And so I'm like, how am I gonna frame it to dad? I said, okay, Dad, so you're going to think I'm lying, I'm telling you the truth, or I'm out of my head. That's how I framed it with him. And he's like, no, like I think this is, no,
oh, yeah,
I
it
get
landed.
it. Yeah, no, I'm with you, I get it. And keep in mind, like 17, 18, same time period,
Sure.
I discovered Edgar Cayce. I don't know if that means anything to anyone. So yeah, he's like, So like sleeping.
For those that don't know.
Yeah. So he's referred to as the sleeping prophet. He would go in a trance and he would give amazing readings. And this was, I think, in the 50s, 60s. I don't know if I'm right about that. But he introduced me to Edgar Cayce. I just grabbed a book off of his bookshelf one day. Yeah.
God,
He didn't say read this book, but
Sure.
what is this?
Yeah.
I think it was about Atlantis. I'm like, Atlantis, tell me more. And then I ended up reading that book, and then I started burning through all of his books. And at the time, so we're going off on a little tangent. At the time, Edgar Cayce was almost like an alternative belief system for me, right? Because
Sure.
12 years of Catholic school.
Right.
Now I read those books and I think, oh, this is a roadmap. This isn't.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Like,
right.
I get that. I don't know about that. Sure. Like, for me anyway. Like, I'm sure it works for a ton of other people.
Yeah.
But not that part. But yeah, they're way different. I read them way differently now.
So I think it's interesting. You're a year into this journey. I mean, we could talk to you again in 5 or 10 years and see where you are with it. What are you doing with it today? Like, what's current?
Yeah, so I'm doing readings for folks, tuning into their animals beforehand, and then talking to the people afterwards.
And if I got it right, they're both living animals, or they've transitioned.
That's correct. Yeah. And I wasn't sure.
So I think we should have said, talk with alive or. Yeah, that would have gotten even more attention.
Yeah. And I didn't know, like, so I was tuning into Chucky, and I asked Chucky to connect me with Henry, White Cat Henry.
Yeah.
And then I forgot that I made that request. And then like a week goes by.
Yeah.
And I start to tune into Chucky, and then I see Henry, and I'm like, something's wrong. What's going on here? And like, the next day, same thing.
Yeah.
And then about 4 days later, I heard orange and white tabby. And then I thought, oh, you dum-dum. You were asking Chucky to connect you to prior animals.
Right.
And
right.
he did, right? And so
Sure.
So then I got
That's
Adelita.
what you asked for.
Right.
Yeah.
But I totally forgot about it.
Sure.
So then I got a journal, and I started writing. Now I write everything down. But when the past cats started to show up, I picked up the phone and I called Adelita. So I'm like, this is your area, of your expertise of beings
Sure.
that have passed. And her response to me was animals. I'm like, alive? Right. Yes. Dead? Yes. Animals.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And she said, and also, as a matter of fact, or I think I asked this one, was, well, how far does this non-human communication go? Mm-hmm. And she said, anything with a life force.
Yep.
Oh, well, that explains a couple of things. Okay. Thanks.
What would you share with someone in your shoes a year ago when they've just had their first experience? You've got a year under your belt. You've done a lot of discovery. Some people probably have the experience and like pack it away or stuff it down, or what would you suggest?
After San Pedro the first time and second time or whatever, third time, and meditation with David and energy starting to show up, there was a 9-month period where I really was questioning, like, what is going on? Am I losing my shit? I'm not quite sure. Because I was feeling things and hearing things and seeing things subtly. It came on for me subtly. But it was never anything like Son of Sam. Like, I hear the neighbor's dog and it's telling me to kill someone. Like, it was never anything like that. If anyone's,
that's great. Thank you for letting us know.
So, like, there's a difference.
Feel much better now.
Right. Because sometimes people are going to go, well, you're hearing animals talk to you.
Yeah.
What are they saying? Like, if it's something bad, maybe there's something wrong. This is not that. Right?
Yeah, got it. Feel much better now.
Yeah, good. But if you're starting to hear things, see things, feel things, what really worked for me was talking with someone who's done this before and contextualizing what it looks like.
Right.
And books were great, but they were very incomplete for me. It's almost like reading a book about dream interpretation and then going, I had a dream about a car. Like, it's maybe, but you know what? That book wasn't written specifically about that dream.
Right.
It's a great starting point, and maybe it helps in certain situations. But if you're far along down the path, if things are showing up for you, I think a mentor is a great idea.
Yeah. I'm guessing you may have reflected or ruminated on this a bit. I don't know that you'll have a specific answer. Do you think about, or do you have a reason why you think you got this gift or why it showed up now?
I don't know why now, but I know why animals.
Yeah.
So there was a day I was meditating and I asked the question, why animals? And what I started to hear was Monet, Picasso, Renoir. Not that I'm an art student all I know is they're famous artists. And so my interpretation of that was, well, music and art are expressions of self and spirit. And so this is I can't do that. I can't paint. I can play guitar poorly. I enjoy it, but the cats may run. So my expression is the animal communication, is hearing the animals.
Got you. So I don't think I've asked you this before, but if I wanted to have you communicate with my dog, who I treat much differently, by the way, or engage differently. I was always nice to my dog, but how we engage with each other has changed dramatically since you shared some of this. How would I go about having you communicate with Loki?
Yeah, I mean, it would be the same way that I do with any other person. Would be fill out this form, and show me some pictures.
And the form helps you do what? What's going on there?
Very basic information: your name, your dog's name, type of animal, age of animal, and the pictures are super helpful.
Okay,
super helpful
for connecting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got you.
Yeah.
So I think I understand where you are with it now. Where do you want to go with it? Where do you see it taking you?
I think there's room for folks who are having experiences to have a space to talk about them. So, like I said in the beginning, it was all about me and the animals, and then I started to have one-on-ones with folks. And so I'd love to work with folks, specifically in the psychedelic space. If you've had psychedelic experiences and you heard grandma, or you saw a thing, or you went to the haunted house and you felt some things and you're not quite sure and you don't know how to talk about it and you want to be part of a group where you're going to talk about these things, that sounds like a hoot to me. I would love to work with folks like that. I would also, I mentioned Jeff
I mean,
earlier.
I had weird things happen in a haunted house, but you can't help.
Okay. Those sound like different things.
Yeah.
And I'd love to get in front of more folks and tell them about animals.
Well, I think what's refreshing about your come from, at least my experience with some clairvoyants and other folks in the space, is it feels a little evangelical when I hear them talk about it, and they want everybody to get it. And I feel like the way you've shared it tonight, or at least in other conversations, is just like, this is what happened, and you can either take it for what it's worth.
That's what it comes down to. I mean, I'm not looking trying to convert anyone. That doesn't do anyone any good.
Right.
People who are in the middle, make a decision. But
you'll figure it
let
out.
me know. We're down.
Yeah.
It's fine. And people who want to explore the thing, don't you want to do things with people who are excited about the same thing that you're like? Let's do that.
Let's jump in.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah.
I'm not looking to convert anyone to do anything.
So we're going to shift gears away from the core topic.
Okay. Is this where my answer is Jack Johnson every time?
And so maybe in about 10 or 15 minutes, we'll start taking questions from the audience. So I hope you guys have one or two good ones. I know there's at least one beautiful dog in the room, so we'll see what happens.
Okay.
So the change your lens question. So what person was your greatest influence and why?
The individual who comes to mind is Professor Morano, undergraduate journalism professor, who has written a ton of books about animals from the perspective of the animals.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And if you were alone on a desert island, what's the one book you would bring if you could only bring one?
Letters from a Nut.
Okay.
It's
You're on point.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Yeah, so it's about I don't know who wrote the book. I don't know if anyone really knows who wrote the book. The foreword was written by Jerry Seinfeld, and then there's these just crazy letters about a guy who stayed at a Hilton, and he's complaining. He writes a letter to the Hilton about them not helping him with his samurai sword to bring him to the room. It's all over the place. It's very funny. But that would make me
It'll keep
laugh.
you entertained
That would make
on
me
the
laugh.
desert island. Yeah.
Right.
In the same situation, this is loaded. What vinyl album would you bring?
I would probably bring Pink Floyd, The Wall.
I thought you were going to say Jack Johnson.
I know, but you said vinyl. That changed things.
Fair enough. This is a great question. Do we live in a simulation?
Oh, here's how I think about it. You ready? So I feel like if you were to play Monopoly, that's sort of training for real estate, but it's so not training for real estate.
Right.
And I feel like this is the syllabus we've all agreed to, and sometimes we take the syllabus really seriously, but this is what we subscribed to before we came here, and now we're living out the agreement.
But if you
So is that a yes or no? I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
I think that's a non-answer to is this a simulation?
So yes.
But it sounds like a curriculum.
Like maybe a yes.
Maybe it is.
It's like it's a 0.5.
Training ground.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you believe in the afterlife?
Yes.
And if so, what do you think it is?
I really don't know.
There's animals there.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I feel like we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, right? That phrase.
The physical meat bag thing.
Yeah. Right. And so we get to live in this thing, but then when we're not living in this thing, then we go back to something like a pool of something.
Sure.
Maybe?
And it's kind of a two-part. So if you believe there's another space or dimension,
yeah, for sure.
Through psychedelics, can we access that more, or is that kind of pierced?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And are there
specifically
other ways?
with San Pedro, at least from my experience?
Yeah. And, I think that to me brings up a whole conversation around altered states of consciousness and plant medicine and psychedelics versus other things like ecstatic dance or fasting. Like there's other ways to get there.
Yeah, I think it's all the same thing.
Yeah.
Like for me, my trifecta is Peter, San Pedro.
Mm-hmm.
It's meditation and it's animals.
Yeah.
Right? For other people, it could be dance.
Yeah.
And mushrooms
Yep.
or something, but I found those things that work for me. And there's various tools to help us get to a place. Find the tools, be it animals or San Pedro or mushrooms or whatever it is that helps you get there and keep on going.
Yeah, this is so great. Jacob, thanks for the questions. I didn't really know you guys had these locked away. If you could take psychedelics with any person, dead or alive, why not? Who would it be, and where would you trip, and what substance might you want to take? We should all be answering this question, by the way.
I really like San Pedro, so I'm going to go with San Pedro.
Which is mescaline based, for those that don't know, right?
Yeah. I would love to do that in the Amazon.
Okay, so we got the place.
That'd be fun.
And who might you want to do it with?
I think like everyone I know. I really do. Like I'm such, when people are like, should I do San Pedro? I'm like, I'm an awful
So remember
person
when you
to
got
ask that question.
when you got that invitation,
right?
And you blindly trust, yeah.
Right. Same.
Is there a substance you are fascinated with and want to try but haven't tried yet?
Ayahuasca.
Whew, good luck. Would you describe one of your most impactful psychedelic experiences? I know they're pretty ephemeral. Yeah, I know. They kind of blur, but is there one besides the first one that really...
Yeah, I mean, so we'll go all the way back to this past weekend.
So just a few days ago.
Just all but a couple days ago. And I was having such a hard time getting the San Pedro down. It was really hard. And that was the second time in a row, and I didn't even know.
Has anybody else in here done San Pedro or had Wachuma? So just so they know. Yeah. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay, let's get into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a cactus, and the way that you can consume it is at least one of two ways that I'm familiar with.
Yep.
One is you make a tea out of it, you boil it down, and you make a tea out of it. The other is you dry it out, and then you add water later to it.
Yeah, it's dehydrated.
It's dehydrated. And the trick of it is you better drink it quickly, or it's going to sort of start to congeal and become jelly.
That's not fun.
And that's way worse than just liquid. And the liquid's not great. It's like, it's not a great...
The taste profile is challenging.
Yeah, like think bottom of the shoe plus aloe plus something that you can't quite identify.
Which we're making it really... Drinking. We're not selling it to you.
No, you don't drink it for the flavor. Right? You don't do that.
So this weekend, you do a little...
All right, forgot where we are. So I had some San Pedro this weekend, and I didn't know if I was going to get to the place that I wanted to get because I was having a hard time getting it in. And now the way that the day of San Pedro starts for me is like when it's starting without even drinking, the energy's coming through and things start moving. And I'm like, how much do I actually need? I don't even know. But like the trees are dancing and cliffs are expanding and collapsing and moving left and right. It's like a very windy day, but there's no wind. And then all of a sudden I start to see things, starts to show up. And this was pretty heavy. This one time, I heard this very lovely woman's voice say, "I'll meet you in there, honey." And
where was the there?
It was this either a hallway or a room, like pink, dingy, and I'm like, nothing's good's gonna come out of that. Like that's nasty. And so my first reaction was to ask, like, is this some type of fucked up repressed memory? Like, what's going on here? And no, nothing. Oh, this is the collective drama or trauma of everyone. also that's what you get mad at. You get mad, you react to when someone says something out of their trauma. So now you know what you get mad at.
You get upset.
I do.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I get mad at that.
Wow.
And so now, it was so humbling to hear that. And so now, like when I hear, and like at least 2 instances showed up that night. I'm like, oh, like I felt it. I'm like, okay, so like, why are you mad? Why is it irritating?
Well, there you go.
So that was one thing that showed up.
Yeah.
About an hour later, I'm not feeling all that well, and I go to say hello to my favorite palm tree, and I as I'm puking or purging,
Energetically purging. Yeah.
but actually real purging.
Yeah.
Well, whatever you can puke up at the time. I heard you like to live between worlds. I was like, oh, what does that mean? So I gave it some thought, and the realization was you don't like to commit wholeheartedly to things.
Well, except for marriage, right?
Except marriage.
Yes.
Yeah, and this was extremely difficult to like,
Process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so I'm like, yeah, I guess you're right. About 20 minutes later, I'm feeling nauseous again, and the language in my head was, I'd really prefer not to puke again. And as soon as I thought that, like I'm heads down, and as I'm puking, I'm thinking, prefer. What a shitty word to use. Like, what an awful non-committal word to use. And I'm like, okay, well, let's do this. And so I'm squeezing every ounce of air out of my stomach.
Fully committed.
Totally committed. This is what commitment feels like. Now I get it. Now, man, I'm like, let's do it. Like anything else, let's keep on going. And it was way better than not wanting to puke. Right?
And being stuck.
Oh my God. Yeah, being stuck. It's awful. Yeah. It's awful. So
Thanks for that very graphic answer. I think we all get it now.
Wait, which part?
Yeah.
The flavor profile?
Yeah. So we'll be doing Q&A here in a second.
Yeah, let's do it.
They have one more question. They say, a simple question. In 60 seconds or less, what is the nature of consciousness?
Oh, how should I know?
I think they're being a bit cheeky.
It's the nature of consciousness.
We'll do the Q&A, but I think one thing that's important to share with folks is I'm involved in multiple channels of Signal and Telegram and LinkedIn and all these different things. I was sharing this great photo of Nick and the title of the talk, and I was sharing it with a group that I was pretty sure would be receptive to the conversation. And I wish I had my phone with me. I'd read it right off Signal. The response was something like, "Is this a satire?" They thought the whole thing was a joke. Yeah, and no offense taken, and I think it was actually pretty funny what I showed you. Yeah. But I think it takes courage, and I think it's a lot of your willingness to share just authentically. So I just want to say thank you for that, because I think it means a lot. And let's open it up for Q&A. With anybody has a burning question or one or two. Yeah, please.
Thanks. I would be a first timer, so my questions are more about the trip.
Yeah.
How much should a beginner take? How long would a first trip last? Do you have bad trips sometimes versus good? And do you always throw up?
Really great questions.
Yeah, really good questions.
You want to get all those? So dosage, how long, bad, and do you always get to puke as a bonus?
Got it. Yeah. So I think in terms of dried cactus, it's about 3 tablespoons. I could be wrong.
A couple grams, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you don't want to be. You don't want to feel really, really high. That's not productive, right? Then you're just really, really high. But you need enough to get you to where you want to go. So I'm a terrible person to ask this question of in this case, because I'm like, more is better than less, right? Because you don't want to be over here. You want to be over here. And so how do you do it with like 1 more tablespoon or 2? I don't know. I'm going for 2.
A lot of times they'll ask for a second round. If you're doing it in a ceremonial setting, they'll do a first dose, and then a few hours later they'll ask if people want seconds. You typically don't want to take too much on the front end, if possible, because you can't take less. Once you've taken it and you've consumed that dose, you're going for whatever ride it's going to take you on. So titrating up.
But I also found the opposite true for me, like at least in hindsight, was I think I needed more, or I certainly had more in the beginning, 2017, 2018, And now I don't need as much.
Well, that's a whole different
I
thing
just
over
don't.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and the questions you're asking are great, and they're all dosage is dependent, just like everything, on your own body type, how much experience you've had. All medicine's kind of personal. The other piece to this is whether you're talking about psilocybin or LSD
Yeah.
or MDMA or Wachuma. So they're all different. So how long is that? Let's talk about a typical Wachuma experience.
Yeah. So with San Pedro, it would be you start drinking around 10 o'clock in the morning. It starts to kick in around 10:30, 11. Everything gets quiet around 11:30, 12. Everything being everyone. The chatter stops. People are now in it. And you're seeing, hearing, you're having conversations with Peter for, I don't know, maybe an hour. And then you're in the energy if you want to be, or you step out of it and you're back into having conversations with people.
The circles, some that I've been with Nick and others, can start in that morning period, and they'll wrap up, about sunset, say 5, 6, 7 hours later. And you do not want to be operating a vehicle for any reason. It's just not a thoughtful thing to do for yourself, and you don't know how much of that's going to last or how long. There's other substances that can be 24 and 48-hour experiences. Large, doses of psilocybin can take you on an 8 to 12-hour ride. So it really depends on a lot of factors. And I'd be happy to chat with you later or refer you to someone to get more into your particular case. But yeah, those are great questions.
No, I've thrown up twice. I've done it probably 10 times, and it was only recently that I threw up. And here's what happened: was the first time that I threw up was probably about a year and a half-ish ago, a year ago, after I was told about the animals showing up, and the intention going in was get anything out of the way that's going to cause a problem for me and get me on a path to better communication with the animals. That was the request. I think I got an answer. I threw up pretty darn good that time. And so this past weekend, I threw up for reasons of, as it was shown to me, non-committal, right? Indecisiveness, shall we say. And now that's out of the system. So my wonder is, well, what's the thing that's going to show up because of that? So I'm looking forward to
Creating
it.
space a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Please, yeah.
Do you know the reason why photos are important?
I think it's just,
Of animals.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there's an energetic signal with the photos versus just name, date, serial number type of thing, right? It's helpful to start to get the read, but the pictures, there's something to it.
So why indigenous people for a lot of years, didn't let people take their photo? Because it freezes your cell memories. So every time you look at a photo, it's the cells of an animal, the cells of a person. That's why it can evoke emotions from us. So when you look at that photo, you're connecting with the essence of that animal, the cells, the life force of it. And that's why a photograph, films are so powerful.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. No matter what the topic is we're talking about, and then we'll get into animals for a second, it's the energetic exchange specifically, right? So we all have energy fields, call it an aura, whatever you want to call it. We have an energy field, and there's information in there, there's connection in there, there's emotions in there, there's a bunch of stuff in there. So when we can get to a place where we can communicate with someone at that level, be it a human or an animal, if you've ever heard the term empath, someone who picks up someone else's feelings and emotions and may get them confused as their own, right? That's basically the definition, right? But all it is information. You don't have to do anything about it. It's just information. However, you can get it confused as your own, and then now you may feel like you need to do something about it. So once you can distinguish your field from someone else's, I didn't do that for a long, long time, and then I did, and so then I immediately recognized me versus you, immediately. And I've always had an appreciation for animals, so it made sense that they would show up for me. To some degree, it makes sense. And then once you do that, you're not really, it's almost like like if you were to talk to a human being without any awareness of their energy field, you're talking to the skin and the bones, and that's what you're talking to, right? But if you can sit with someone and have an appreciation for that person and be energetically aware, now a different form of communication is going to happen. And just like the book said, it's the same thing with humans as it is for animals. That's the same thing that happens with animals because they all have energy fields. They're all doing their thing. And so if you can tap in and they want to talk back, just like with people, and some people are good communicators, some people are not good communicators. Sometimes someone's distracted. Right, it's the same thing. So now may not be the right time to talk to an animal, just like it may not be the right time to talk to a human being. Right? So there's a lot of carryover between how you interact with human beings at a physical level and animals at a physical level, as well as energetically humans and animals.
I think something you shared previously was really interesting is how you learn to turn it off. Like there's the opening up of the channel, and then you were getting a lot of uninvited conversations.
Yeah. So this is when I was talking to Adelita actually one time, and out of nowhere she says, "You're not shutting down when you're meditating." And I thought, well, that explains the past month of hearing this radio static.
Right.
Like it was just this background static, and I thought, well, I guess that's just how it is. And then she brought it to my attention, and there's a very clear beginning with the meditation. There's a clear middle, and there's a clear deliberate end that happens during the meditation. And ever since then.
And when you're saying meditation, you're talking about your communication sessions, just to be clear.
Communication. So every day there's a meditation, and then when you're chatting with the animals, you also want to close it up. But that's also different though. So with the animals, you're connecting, right, and then you're disconnecting,
right,
and then you're shutting down.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Close the door.
Closing that door.
Yeah.
And it's never 100% closed. There's always a connection.
Right.
It's a volume control. So when you're meditating, you're turning the volume as high as you can, and when you're finished, you're turning it as low as you can because there's always a connection running.
Yeah.
There's always something going. You're always feeling something.
Got it.
But you don't want like things coming at you
Sure.
Yeah, I had a dream
Especially when you're
a
driving.
couple of weeks ago, and I was just like, "What the shit was that?" Like I don't like that. I got a request like as I'm waking up, and my answer was no, and then that left.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
More questions? Yeah, please. Go ahead.
Do you ask their permission prior to?
The permission is the intention from the human. Does that make sense?
The intention from the animal itself.
Yeah, so the animals are here to help. And so if the human wants the help and that intention comes from the human, then the animals are more than welcome to play, or they're more than happy to play.
Okay. I studied animal communication, and I was always taught in the study that we were supposed to always ask permission. So
yeah, I mean, this has been my experience of as long as the human is willing.
Gotcha. No, I completely understand. I just wanted to know your approach.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I mean, it could be different with wild animals. I mean, horses. No one's given me the permission there. There's no intention necessarily there. The coyotes, no intention. The random dog at Home Depot, no intention. Right from the dog. When we were in Cabo. We went to go swim with dolphins, which I had mixed reactions about. Like they live in cages. Yeah. I had very mixed reactions about it, and also I wanted to have the experience of being with a dolphin that close. Like I surf, and I love the dolphins, and I want to have that experience. And when I got there, we're up on the dolphin is now out of the water. There's 3 customers on either side, and the trainer at the head of the dolphin. And I thought I'm going to give it a shot. Like I'm going to see what's going on. And so her name is Liz. I tune into Liz. And she started to talk, and had nothing. And she was unhappy, and it had nothing to do with where she lived in terms of captivity. It had to do with something else.
Have you ever had an animal lie to you?
I don't think so. I've gotten some information where it didn't land with the human, but most things do land with the human.
In terms of like validating what you.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll say things like, "Oh, your dog's showing me." Like the yard, and it's fenced in. Like, I have a yard fenced in. We go out there and we enjoy each other's time together. Great. Like, maybe I guessed that. How many yards are fenced in? I don't know, but more than one. Oh, okay. And I saw your dog running. Is your dog a good runner? No. Well, she thinks she's a good runner. Like she
right.
has a very
in her
serious
mind.
look.
Right.
Dirt was kicking up. Like she really thinks she's a good runner. She's not a good runner. Well, she thinks she is.
It's like humans.
Same exact thing. And with this particular person, I was like, okay, so sometimes things get weird, and so I'm just going to say what I heard. Okay. You've done this before, right? Yeah, I've done this before. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you. Popcorn. No, I don't eat popcorn. Okay. Wheel of Fortune. And then there's silence. And then she dies laughing, and she says, we watch Wheel of Fortune every night together. And about 3 weeks ago, I did have popcorn. I bet she had some. Right? So like the fence, she runs, you're like, I saw those things. They're real. But you could say, he's a really good guesser. But I'm not saying random nighttime game
Jeopardy
shows.
and
Right?
popcorn.
Let me break out my encyclopedia of games. I'm not doing that.
Another question or two? Yeah, hang on one sec.
I shared with you a little bit of a recording of a parrot
Yeah.
speaking. So I'm curious, in your past experiences with communication with animals, have you ever had like a random dog or cat or horse or bird or whatever, all of a sudden like Frank's dead aunt starts talking to you through Jimmy's dog at the park?
I have
You know?
never, no, not
Okay.
I haven't.
Have you had any communication with like anything other than the animal through the animal? Or is it just the animal speaking
Yes.
from itself?
I've had some human communication through animals that come through, but it was at the request of the living human that made the request.
Okay.
And I saw it before she said it. It was about there's this big like shadowy, nothing nefarious, but it was a shadowy, big shadowy figure, big individual, and the woman said, is there something? Is there a spirit around them? I'm like, like it's a big person. Is this who you're thinking of? Like it's a male, it's a big person. Other than that, I'm not quite sure. And I'll say, this is my request to whoever gives me information is animals. I want to stay with animals.
Okay.
So or I want information about this person, but it's because of communicating with the animals. I don't want to open it up to humans. That's not what I'm here for. It's not what I want to do.
Okay.
Stick with the animals. So it's all through the lens of animal.
I have a general question.
Yeah.
When I am outside, just even outside my house, and I am feeling connection to nature,
Yeah.
and feeling connection, in my case, to birds, and they may even come around, all I know that I'm doing in that moment is appreciating and just having a sensitive awareness to what's in my field in that moment.
Yeah.
But I'm just kind of curious as to whether there's more I could be getting from the experience and whether you have advice for me.
Yeah. Do you have a daily or regular meditation practice?
Yes, I have it.
Okay. So there's a few different types of meditations you can do you can start to practice that communication and see if it's a thing for you. And then it's a matter of, does the animal want to talk back? You have to figure it out. I mean, there's sometimes where I'm out when I'm not talking with people and their animals, something will show up, like the coyotes that I mentioned, or something that is non-domesticated, shall we say, shows up. And that sort of just shows up. Like there's no let me try to talk to. It just sort of comes and goes pretty quickly.
You're talking about with the wild animals specifically versus domestic.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I understand that after the San Pedro journey,
Yeah.
that's when you started talking to animals or hearing them.
That's when I started to hear things and see things for myself without the animals. We'll call it phase 1. Yeah, so start to...
So what I'm wondering is,
Yeah.
can you talk about your San Pedro experience and how that connected you psychically? I know it happened after, but what happened during?
But I would say that the San Pedro and the meditation that I was doing as a result of doing the San Pedro, because that's just the path that laid out. When Adelita, the young lady who I saw at the psychic fair, when she said, and it's going to be easy for you, I attribute San Pedro and the meditation to the easy part. nothing specific to this topic that we're talking about tonight showed up in the first journey. It just wasn't. What showed up in the first journey was, holy shit, there's a thing that I really don't understand that's happening here. And all the things that I was like, I don't know if this is going to be like talk to God, like source, those things that I was reading about the day before that I had no amount of ability to understand or maybe even believe.
Became real, yeah.
That within 8 hours was, I can't even explain what just happened.
Have you ever had musical communication with animals and have them be attracted to you when you're either playing or singing?
I feel like your musical skills are way better than mine. No, but I'll say this. So I do appreciate music and always have, and I realized before the animals showed up that I get talked to in song sometimes, and sometimes I'll get something looping in my head, and I'm like, where the hell did that come from? So
I was making reference to that. More
okay. So that happens periodically, 100%. So I'll give you an example, and for anyone who's sitting there going, man, like that's cool that animal communication happened with you. Like I don't know, like if anything could happen like that for me, or I'm not sure. I'll give you one good reason. Here we go. One good reason why it can and will, if you want it to, and you put the time in and the intention to, right? So 7 months prior to sitting down with a young lady who said, they're showing me Dr. Doolittle. They're showing me you can talk to animals, and it's going to be easy for you. I was sitting in a hospital for 4 days in San Diego, staring at all the traffic going up and down the 5 because I did not read my little girl cat right. And I picked her up, and I didn't give her respect, and she told me that was wrong. So she bit me in my index finger. She hit the bone. I had a bone infection. I was in the hospital for 4 days. I came out of the hospital with a bucket of antibiotics for 30 days and an IV of liquid antibiotics for 30 days, or maybe the pills were 2 weeks, whatever it was. But it was 30 days of a PICC line in my arm getting shot up with antibiotics. Right? So, again, wasn't a great candidate, and that was definitely a mistake. But this other thing, it opened up seven months later, and like I'm sitting there, part of the other internal dialogue, I was like, "You're fucking kidding me!" Like, someone has a sense of humor, right? This is hilarious. Like, someone's laughing a lot about this.
Well, yeah, you brought up when you brought up music. When you play,
Yeah.
Chucky sits into the guitar case and sits there and watches him play.
Oh,
So
that's true.
When we're talking about does
Yeah.
it simulate or have any connection with the cat, it certainly does with this one particular cat. He literally goes into the case and sits there while he plays.
Yeah,
and,
that is true. Yeah, regardless of how badly I'm playing.
And just so everyone knows, Ninja's
Yeah.
not a biter. It just happens that he didn't listen to Ninja.
Yeah, that's true
That's her
too.
other cat.
Yeah, all true. True stories.
I was just wondering if when you hear animals speak to you, do they sound different?
So mostly they sound like a version of me.
Okay.
However, so this showed up, and I don't know if it's going to change over time, and things change over time. I was talking to a dog. A woman made the request. I talked to her dog, and I was getting some information. And my process is, people fill out a spreadsheet. I get the pictures. I tune into the dog with the pictures, and then I just start like typing notes, right? And have a community, like why are we talking about these things? Why are we saying these things? And I'll just keep on typing notes, right? And then I go over to the questions that the people ask. And this dog that we were talking about, that the reading was for, there was a question of, should I rehome Polly, or whatever the dog's name was. And so I'm hearing Polly the entire time, right? It's just like this soft voice type of thing, like maybe mine, but like softer. And when I read the question about should we rehome Polly, I got this militant, slightly gruffy, she stays. I was like, oh shit. That's, like that, like totally different voice. Right now I'm reading the other questions, and it's like, well, what does Polly think of other dog name? I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's that dog, right? And so I get on the line with this young lady, like I'm laughing. I'm laughing because of she stays. Like, it was just so, whoa, like in your face, like this is how it better go down type of thing, right? And I tell this young lady, and she goes, really? And I go, yeah, really. She goes, that's funny, because that was the dog that Polly put into the hospital twice. Like, well, I'm not telling you how to run your household. That is not what I do here. I'm the interpreter of the animals. They say things. My job is to give it to you. If I have an opinion, I will say this is my opinion. But that fundamentally, that is not what I'm doing here. And this dog clearly had an opinion about rehoming the dog. Now we're talking about, well, what are the options, right? And there's meditation going on, so like there's still an exchange of energy. And she goes, my son has a relationship with the dog that has gotten bitten. And maybe he'd be willing to take the dog. And I get this, like almost like a dam was opened up, like this easy feel comes through. And I'm like, well, I think that's worth exploring. Here's what I just experienced. So I personally think it's worth exploring.
So we'll probably bring it home here. Thank you for sharing, first of all.
Yeah, thank you.
All that.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Where do you want to go with it? Where do you see it going in the next whatever's around the corner or over the hill?
I mean, doing the one-on-ones is a hoot. I mean, honestly, like it's super fun. I get high as a kite. I am some days I'm just like, oh, little stone, and sometimes I am just high as a kite. I'm like, I'm just going to stay here, and then eventually, like, you come down. But it's an amazing feeling. It's unbelievable. So want to keep doing that and opening up the relationship with people and their animals. I mean, I feel like, like the larger, and this may get into like, preachy. So at the risk of preaching, we move away from nature and we don't get any good result from it. If this could be the part where I help people get closer together to it, then that I feel like that's a decent contribution, right? And in that respect, I would love to get in front of bigger rooms and talk about animals, or as last weekend showed up for me, like, what does it mean to commit to something? Because as much as we talked about animals today, for me, it was really committing to animals and doing this thing, or else I couldn't be here talking about it. It would be me having random conversations with my cat and random interactions with dogs at Home Depot or wherever. Like, it wouldn't be what we're talking about. I wouldn't have had the experiences. So a broader room about what it means to commit, I think, and everyone can take whatever they want out of that. That's the beauty of that topic. This is just how it showed up for me.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Thanks for all that. Thank you guys for coming tonight, and we'll be around for a little bit after this, so thank you so much.